So I just got back from what I would consider the greatest spring training game of all time. I saw both Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer pitch. Francisco Lindor hit 2 home runs. Starling Marte was playing a game in a Mets uniform. It simply cannot get better, and I'll break down all of that on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, I'll tell you, I had an absolute blast today watching a ball game with my dad, a tradition we've always had since I was a little kid, where he'd take me out to Port St. Lucie, we'd catch a game. Actually, growing up, what made the tradition a little bit better is he would usually take me during the week. So he'd take me out of school on like a Monday or a Tuesday, and you get to play hooky and end up watching a ball game. So that wasn't there today, but in my entire lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen a game like the one I just watched during spring training. For about $30 a ticket, we just got to sit back and watch two of the greatest pitchers of all time for 9 innings in a spring training game. Thank you, Lockout, for making things super weird that this ends up happening where deGrom starts the game, gives you 3 innings, and then you get to watch Scherzer for the final 6 because Scherzer is a lunatic. I mean, this guy in his second spring outing is throwing 90 pitches. What is this Mets team? What is this reality as a Mets fan? That this is what I just watched. The star power. I was on display. You heard me there. Got broke up talking about it. Just up and down the roster. To see Starling Marte, first game in a Mets uniform, look great out there. Pete Alonso, of course, had a nice big double. This team is just loaded. And I got to see a lot of it in this game. And again, it starts with deGrom and Scherzer, and that's where we're going to open up the show today. Jacob deGrom looked like Jacob deGrom. I don't think there's any concern right now, in my opinion, about the health stuff. He's averaging 97, topped out at 99, strikes out 3 batters in the first inning, 5 overall in 3 innings, gave up 1 run in the third. Dylan Carlson hit a double, which Starling Marte did a nice job running that down. I'll talk about him more in the final segment today because I thought he looked really good in this first bit of Grapefruit League action. But Carlson did double. He's a great hitter for the Cardinals, a player that, I look at as someone who could be the Cardinals' best player in a few years. That's how much I really like Carlson's game. So, don't worry that he hit a double off deGrom. Harrison Bader ends up getting a base hit, which led to one of the funniest moments of the day for me because Bader hit a ground ball in the hole. Would have been hit no matter what if Francisco Lindor was able to get to it, but he wasn't. The ball rolls under his glove, and the dude behind me, I just hear him say, he like scoffs. He goes, oh, we're paying that guy so much money because obviously, because Lindor can't field it, Carlson was able to come around and score on the play. But again, this is Grapefruit League action. It's a spring training game. And just the fact that, not even an error, just what would have been a remarkable play for him to even get to that ball. But again, even if he gets to it, Bader's a speedster. All that would have happened is it would have been runners at first and third. But the fact that this guy says, we pay that guy so much money when he doesn't get to it, it just shows you the uphill battle that a player has to climb when they sign a $341 million contract. I'm not saying we should feel bad for Lindor because granted, he has $341 million coming his way. No one's feeling bad for him, but still, it is harder to win that trust and that love and affection from Mets fans when you're making that much money and when you had the type of first season he did have. But Lindor certainly made up for it because that guy behind me got awfully quiet when Lindor hit 2 home runs in this game. But I want to talk about the offense a little bit more in the next segment. I want to focus on the pitching performances I got to watch in a spring training game. Again, spring training. Usually, when you're talking about like a Jacob deGrom second spring start, maybe he still would have given you 3 innings. But next you maybe see like an Edwin Diaz pitch the fourth. And then, if you're lucky, you get a Seth Lugo thrown in there before you start seeing the minor league arms coming in, or you'll see, the Alex Claudios of the world, Jose Budo, the guys that are either trying to make the team or the prospects that are maybe close to the 40 by the end. You might see a low A arm get thrown in there. And instead, after enjoying Jacob deGrom for 3 innings, after he walked off to a standing ovation, the one thing I will say too, being in person, which is something that anytime you see a Jacob deGrom start, but nobody gets a louder ovation than Jacob deGrom, and rightfully so. Absolutely electric when deGrom came out throughout the entire start, every time he got a strikeout, and then when he walked off, got a big standing ovation. Everyone loves deGrom, and it was a very solid spring outing that just continues to breathe confidence into this Mets team. When you see a Jacob deGrom go out and look like himself, you just start to get that sense that, all right, everything's okay with that arm. Let's try to erase what we saw at the end of last season. Let's try to forget that he wasn't available. And let's remember that he's been available for the Mets throughout his entire career, has been a very durable starting pitcher, and looks to be right on track for an opening day start and hopefully a really big season. And then you have the guy that is, just way advanced on the track right now to be ready for this season, which is Max Scherzer, who's already in midseason form. The fact that he went into this game with a 95 pitch limit, what are we doing? How is that possible? What was he doing during those CBA negotiations? I know at times they would say Scherzer left for a little bit. Obviously, he was going somewhere to throw because this guy it's just ridiculous. And the stuff, it didn't like completely blow me away seeing him for the first time. I wasn't, in awe after watching Jacob deGrom having just pitched. It wasn't like Scherzer was doing anything so spectacular in this spring outing, but what he was doing was just being Max Scherzer. And to see that and to be on, the right side of things instead of rooting against the Max Scherzer, that was a welcome surprise for me because this was it's just awesome. It's just awesome to see this dude just attack. That's the thing that's different about Max Scherzer than other pitchers I've seen is this dude is no nonsense. I'm going to give you my best stuff. Try to hit it. I'm surprised that he even can strike out almost 300 batters in some seasons. I think he has had at least one 300 strikeout season. Let me actually look that up real quick, make sure I'm correct on that. But the fact that this guy is routinely 200 strikeouts is actually surprising to me. Not that he doesn't have that type of strikeout stuff, but just the fact that he did have, by the way, a 300 strikeout season in 2018 with the Nationals, exactly 300. But again, for me, the surprising thing, it's not that he can strike out that many batters. It's that the way that he attacks hitters, pitching to contact, I'm surprised he can rack up that many strikeouts because he is just all over the strike zone, 63 strikes in 90 pitches. He just pounds the zone. And there's a lot of hitters in that Cardinals lineup that are crowding the plate, namely Juan Yepez. This guy was just, it looked like his back foot was literally just standing on the plate, like behind the plate. That's how much he's crowding. And deGrom attacked him, but didn't attack him the way that Scherzer did, in that the first pitch Scherzer throws is right in this guy's belly for a strike because he's on the plate. And just that type of bulldog mentality we've been watching for years when he was with the Nationals. Now it's in a Mets uniform, and you get to see it up close and personal. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. It's just awesome, man. That's all I can say. Again, you pay to see a spring training game, and you hope you get a couple innings of Jacob deGrom. This is what makes it, in my opinion, the greatest spring training game of all time. How could it get better than the Mets going out, winning, the offense looking great, and the only two people who threw a pitch in the blue and orange today? It's Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. And you now take that and you look ahead to this season. And this idea that, when you're watching the random weekend series against the Atlanta Braves in June, and you're watching the Friday night game and the Saturday night game, you realize that you could potentially see in a 2-day span like 18 innings where the only people who throw a pitch are Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and like Edwin Diaz. Like that's gonna happen at some point where one of these guys is gonna throw a complete game, the next guy's gonna follow it up with 8 innings, and Diaz is gonna come in for a save. And it's literally gonna be 48 hours where a Braves lineup is gonna see nothing but some of the most elite pitching this game has. It's just spectacular. And then you pair that on this day on Sunday with an offense that looked great. Everyone in the lineup contributed. Francisco Lindor had a big day. I want to talk about that side of things in just a minute. But first, it is that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is in full swing, now getting towards the final weekends here. And from all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, this game from the Mets, as I said, I'm calling it the greatest spring training game of all time. I dare you to find a more entertaining game that any of you have watched. To me, the sad thing is the game that comes to my mind before any other was the game that Oliver Perez got lit up in 2011, maybe somewhere around there. I don't know. Maybe that sounds a little bit too late, but I do remember a spring training game where Oliver Perez got lit up, and it was just so much fun to be around all these Mets fans just collectively hating a guy at once. But that's a different type of atmosphere than going to a spring training game and watching this team that everyone's so excited to see in 2022 and just seeing the potential all over the place. To see a Mark Canha who honestly got the same ovation as Travis Janikowski. I mean, no one knows this guy. It is really funny. The casual Mets fan sees him as just anonymous left fielder, and that is great because this guy's been a really good player and had a nice game. Every single person in that starting lineup for the Mets either got a hit, drew a walk, or in Eduardo Escobar's case, had a sacrifice fly. So everyone got on base, and Eduardo Escobar hit a bomb that drove in a run. And that came in the bottom of the second when Pete Alonso hit a double with an exit velo of 110. Absolute seed off of his bat. I will say that the left fielder, whose name, I think it was Alec Burleson, was out there. I don't know if he is a natural left fielder. It certainly didn't look like it. The ball hit his glove. It was kind of hit right at him. It was a missile. I'm not saying it should have been ruled an error, but it could have been caught. Regardless, Pete gets a double out of it. Robinson Cano, who maybe didn't have the best game of all the Mets starters. He was sitting in that DH spot, but he was still productive. And I even saw my guy Jordan Grossman, shout out to him, run social media for us, along with Josh Finkelstein and Locked On Mets on Twitter. I saw him saying that the Mets should just, get rid of Cano now. He's cooked. I respect that opinion. I see where he's coming from. Dominic Smith and JD Davis are viable DHs on this roster, and Mark Vientos, in my opinion, is already ready as well. So I see where he's coming from. But what I will say is, in this game, Cano was productive. In that at bat, you have nobody out. Alonso on second. Cano hits a weak grounder and gets him over. It's productive. He also got a broken bat base hit later on in the game. So I'm holding out hope that Cano can provide something for the Mets. He moves over Alonso, and then Eduardo Escobar hits an absolute missile into center field that gets caught, but was a very easy sacrifice fly for Alonso to come around and score on. And then also you had in that same inning, Travis Jankowski drew a walk to put a runner on for Tomas Nido, who had himself a day and hit a bomb of a home run, 399 feet to right center field. Just got all of it. Great to see. He got a hit later on in the game as well. In the third inning, Francisco Lindor hit the first of 2 home runs that he had. This one was 108 miles per hour off the bat. and it went into right field, 378 feet. Lindor looked really good. As I mentioned, the guy behind me didn't like the defense on that one play, but Lindor did make some other plays out there, and obviously the bat looks in midseason form already. You have Starling Marte, who I'm going to talk about more in just a bit, but he scored a run in the fifth when he ripped a double down the third base line and later scored on a hit by Mark Canha. Lindor capped off the scoring for the day as he hit a 2-run homer in the seventh inning, this time as a right-handed batter, so hit one from each side of the plate. There's the Jim Beam Bourbon Bar in left field, and he hit it off the top of that awning out there, very close to hitting it over it and to the backfield. Just a missile. You see, Matthew Libator was thrown for the Cardinals. Really good pitching prospect. I think he's the top pitching prospect we have at Just Baseball when it comes to the Cardinals farm system. You can see it with him because here's this left-handed pitcher who's got a nice curveball that he can drop in there. But man, was he throwing batting practice with that fastball. That fastball, the Mets were just squaring it up. Everyone was hitting line drives off of this guy. And he got lucky because he could have had a much more ugly start or much more ugly outing, I should say, for the Cardinals. But Robinson Cano ended up bailing him out, hitting into a bases loaded inning-ending double play. But other than that, the Mets lineup was great. Scored 7 runs. Lindor went 3 for 4. Alonso went 2 for 3. Nito went 2 for 3. The Mets had 12 hits as a team. They drew 3 walks. They scored those 7 runs. And what was crazy, as I again talk about how this was the greatest spring training game of all time, the late inning replacements were great to me as well. For one, Francisco Alvarez pinch ran for Cano in this game, which was just funny. Obviously, it was to put Alvarez into the DH spot if that spot was going to come up in the lineup again. But just the visual of him running out as a pinch runner was really funny. I also tweeted this out, but as he ends up coming in at the end of that inning, to see him move with all of his muscle and being that muscle hamster that he is, he just doesn't move very fluidly. So he's kind of jogging in, and Wayne Kirby is kind of waddling next to him. And the two of them coming in, something about the visual will never leave me. I swear, I can picture it now, picture for the rest of my life. It really did crack me up. Um, but also the other late inning replacements, you have JD Davis and Dominic Smith coming in as late inning replacements. Usually in a spring training game, it is Matt Reynolds, who I think was out there at shortstop as well, but it's those types, right? It's the 4A players, it's the prospects that you're looking and you're trying to go through your program and figure out like who is this guy? Who is number 74 with no name on his back? And in this spring training game, again, it was JD Davis and Dominic Smith. JD did rip one off of Libator, I believe. Got caught, but just overall, the offense looked great, and the team just you look at this roster and the starting lineup they went out there with today, and Nemo. I really don't call him Nemo. Wow, I host a Mets podcast. How am I mispronouncing Brandon Nimmo's name? Um, but Nimmo wasn't out there today. It was Jankowski. Other than that, it was basically, I think, your opening day lineup. Maybe James McCann instead of Nito behind the plate. But other than that, I mean, Mark Canha's out in left. Starling Marte was in right. You had McNeil at second with Lindor at short and Alonso and Escobar at the corners. That's what the team's going to look like. And from seeing it firsthand today, just stars all over the place, guys who can contribute all over the place when the back of your lineup is going to consist of bats like Mark Canha and Eduardo Escobar, who just were productive, quality major league hitters today. Coming through in those situational hitting opportunities that we've seen the Mets come up so short on the last couple of years. This is a team that you can really hum at the early parts of this season. I think they could jump out to a really big lead in this NL East. I believe that this is a team that looks primed and ready to go. And a big part of that is having Starling Marte out in right field. That's what I want to close the show talking about today because he really popped seeing him in person. So we'll get into that in just a bit. But first, I want to tell you about the best tasting protein bar ever, which of course is Built Bar. Built Bars come low in calories, low in sugar, low in fat, but they are high in protein, high in fiber. They all come covered in 100% real chocolate, so they will satisfy that sweet tooth you have. And they also have the first ever protein infused marshmallows, which are the puffs. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat that also comes covered in that 100% real chocolate with flavors like the yummy cinnamony churro, the banana cream pie, and the coconut marshmallow. If you want to try anything that Built Bar has to offer today, make sure you go to built.com and use our promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, so I want to open up the final segment of today's show just talking about Starling Marte's biceps, if you don't mind. Look, you see all the Mets wearing those blue jerseys today. They're all the same, but they look different on one guy, and that's Starling Marte. I don't know what he's got going on there, but I swear the sleeve on his right bicep was different than anyone else's. And obviously, I don't think it's the jersey, it's just the dude's biceps. But I'm telling you, this thing, if he just flexes in that shirt, the sleeves are going to rip off. It is ridiculous to see this guy in person. He is such an uber athlete. And you watch him play right field, and this Mets outfield defense is just going to get so much better. I alluded to it before. There was the double that Dylan Carlson hit into the gap. And off the bat, I mean, that was a seed. It looked like that ball was definitely going to get to the wall and was likely going to be a triple. But Marte was able to cut it off with ease. And he made a lot of really nice plays coming in on the ball. He caught one in foul territory. That was a really tough ball to get to. He looked comfortable out there. And the one thing I'll say is, I read an article this week with the headline that said, the Mets rolling out the Starling Marte experiment in right field. I understand that Marte has not played right field in the big leagues. To me, that does not mean anything. You look at this guy, what he's been throughout his career defensively. He started in the corner. Okay, he started in left field for the Pittsburgh Pirates because there was this guy named Andrew McCutchen who was their center fielder. And in left field, playing in the corner, you know what he did? He was worth 71 defensive runs saved throughout his career in left. In center for his career, minus 12 defensive runs saved. Been better in the corner. Now, that's left field, easiest position in the outfield to play, but Marte has a big arm, by far the biggest arm in this outfield. So when the Mets signed Starling Marte, hell, probably even before they did sign him, there was a podcast host hosting Locked On Mets who said Starling Marte would be the Mets right fielder and Nimmo should stay in center because Brandon Nimmo had a great season in center field last year. And he has been able to acclimate to that position and prove to be above average out there. He's not going to be above average in right. He'd have to play left. And if you do that, you put Mark Canha into right field, which is not the best move as well because his arm doesn't measure to a Starling Marte. At Citi Field, right field is the premium defensive outfield position. It's the toughest position to play in that ballpark. Michael Conforto did a great job adjusting to that and playing that position over the last couple of years. He's not going to be, or he wasn't as good as Marte is going to be this year because Marte is just way more athletic. And also, if you look at the breakdown based on outs above average for Starling Marte last season and how or where he excels out in the outfield, do you know which way or which direction he saves the most runs or creates the most extra outs? It's going to his right. It's going towards third base. Last year, he was worth 4 outs above average going to that side. He was worth 1 out above average going to his left, where he actually struggled defensively is coming in on the ball and going back on the ball, something that you want in center field. Brandon Nimmo does a great job now seeing everything in front of him and coming in on the ball. Starling Marte does a great job going into the gaps. And so in right field, to be able to have him now chasing down those balls in right center field, this Mets defense in the outfield is going to be better than we have seen in a very long time. We talked about that last week as well. So it was good to see him out there. It's good to see him playing defense in right field. And it was great to see him offensively. Got 2 at-bats and they pulled him. He was the first starter to leave, which makes sense. This was his first taste of spring training action, so ease him into it. But what we saw was exactly how Starling Marte can manufacture runs for this Mets lineup because he gets a double, which was nearly 100 miles per hour off the bat. And if you go back to 2019, since that year, over the last 3 seasons. Starling Marte has 162 ground ball hits, and that is courtesy of Matthew Brownstein, I should say, on Twitter. So he has 162 ground ball hits. That's 15 less than Trey Turner. That's one less than DJ LeMahieu. Other than that, only him and David Fletcher stand out. So it's the list goes Trey Turner for most ground ball hits at 177. Then it's LeMahieu at 163. Then it's Fletcher and Marte at 162. He is able to get a ton of ground ball hits because he is fast, and also because he can find holes like he did in this spring training game by hitting the ball hard as hell on the ground and sneaks it into the outfield. And then because of that speed, he can get extra base hits on the ground, which is really impressive. And that's what he did in this game. Rips one right past the third baseman down that third base line, easily comes into second on a double. Then a base hit by Mark Canha, easily comes around and scores. That speed is going to play for this Mets team. It's going to produce a lot of extra runs. To think about the potential of this lineup, to have Brandon Nimmo and Starling Marte atop it, with Francisco Lindor looking to be in a really good place right now, with Pete Alonso as a traditional cleanup hitter, able to just clean up, right? Clean up all those RBIs. And then just this idea that the back third of the lineup could consist of Jeff McNeil potentially, Eduardo Escobar potentially, Mark Canha. I look at the 9-hole and I'm fascinated to see what the Mets do with that, because they could go traditionally and just put the worst hitter in that bottom spot of the lineup with Nito or McCann, or they could try to put the double table setter, and you could go with Jeff McNeil. I don't know if he'd like that, but you could go that route. You could go Mark Canha. Hell, in this game, they went Starling Marte. I think that was simply because they knew he wasn't going to get more than 2 at bats. So they put him at the bottom so the other guys could get 3 or 4 at bats. But that's fascinating to me as well, where the Mets going to go with that bottom third of the lineup and how potent can it really be. It looks great. So I just had to come on today and talk about the greatest spring training game I've ever seen, because it was something to behold. It was great to be in the ballpark, a bunch of Mets fans. The place was pretty packed, and there was just a lot of excitement in the air. And when you have Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer on the mound for a spring training game, it's special, and also it ends quickly. I will say that as well. Less than 3 hours, that game goes pretty fast when you get pitching performances like that, even when the Cardinals gave up 7 runs. Crazy. Anyway, that's going to be all, though, for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan, but we call him Sully. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to get ready for the MLB season and to also look back at some of the best moments in Major League Baseball history. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.